And now, our feature presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. You've seen that seeing is believing. And now, at long last, this is something I've been wanting to do for a while.
Oh yeah.
And I bet you're wondering, how did we get here? Think.
Barney monkey.
Now, my original concept for this video was gonna be how I updated my Super Saiyan 6 Goku, you know, that Kong Studios had released, because at the time, there was no 3.0 mold that they had out, but we knew that 3.0 mold was coming out at the time. But I knew I didn't want to wait that long for them to potentially release a yellow version of Super Saiyan 5, which is basically what the Super Saiyan 6 is. So I was gonna make that. However, one day I was scrolling on Instagram and I saw this one page where this guy, he does like power level breakdowns and comparisons of Dragon Ball AF characters. And he had depicted Rycon. Now Rycon is originally original creation of Unreal Ent Gaming. And I was like, yo, this would be so much cooler to make because the colors contrast so much more. You got the black pants with the red fur and the red hair with the yellow hair and the yellow tail. I was like, yo, that's fire, I gotta make it. Made from the best stuff on earth. Alright, project confirmed, as Kong Studio, aka Beast Deity, would say. But now, what materials did I need in order to forge this custom, right? So, starting with the figures and parts that I needed Ultimate Gohan, and from Ultimate Gohan, what I will be taking is his legs. Now, I wouldn't be using the feet from this figure, I'll just be taking the legs. So the feet pull off very easily. Well, not very easily, but you know, you need a little bit of strength. You don't need hot water or anything to pull the feet off, is what I'm trying to get at. Next, what I needed was the Super Saiyan 4 Goku from S.H.Figuarts. Now, the pieces that I needed from S.H.Figuarts Super Saiyan 4 Goku was, of course, gonna be the torso, the arms, his neck, and funny enough, his pelvis area, along with the tail. Actually, we didn't use the tail. And last but certainly not least, the most important thing actually that inspired this whole custom idea, needed the Kong Studio Evil Gold Super Saiyan 5, right? And the reason why I needed that is for the hair and the tail, and of course his feet and the leg wrappings that go on his, you know, wrap around his leg, right? As for the rest of the material, we have some sanding sticks, epoxy sculpt, an X-Acto blade, some primer, some modeling paint, Mod Podge, top coat, a Dremel, under 18, adult supervision required, brushes, my sculpting tools, and last but certainly not least, straight from my man AFM Customs, we have this conversion peg, which allows, it allows for me to put this head sculpt from a 2.0 Kong Studio figure, aka Beast Deities now, onto a 3.0 mold, which is a very clutch thing. I can't amp him up enough for this because this made this whole process way easier than it would have been. Originally, I was just gonna take the neck from, I was gonna take the neck from Super Saiyan 6 Goku, or Super Saiyan 5 Gold version Goku, and Dremel that and then try to fit that over the Super Saiyan 4 neck from Tamashii Nations. And hey, Future Bombastic here, editing the video. I said it backwards. I meant to say I was going to Dremel a hole in the Tamashii neck and try to fit the Kong Studio Super Saiyan 5 neck in there. I don't know if that would have worked, but that's what I was trying to do. And I'm not even sure that that was even going to work, to be honest. It was something that I was going to try, but honestly, after Dremeling and doing this process, I'm not sure it would have worked, but you know, you never know. Bang, 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 bang. So for the process of putting this whole thing together, I'm not gonna lie, I was doing multiple things at once. First thing first, I had to take everything apart. So I guess the first step I would say is boiling the water. Boiling the water so the figures could soak in it, so it's easier to take the figures apart. Now, for example, with Gohan and Super Saiyan 4 Goku, taking them apart from the waist doesn't need the boiling water. However, taking them apart from the joints does. So after those two figures were boiled and taken apart, the next step is, of course, to get the Gold Evil Super Saiyan 5 Goku and take him apart. Now, this was a little bit different because initially, if I didn't talk to my good man Figuarts, I would have thought that I could have put the figure in the hot water and just pulled the, you know, the leg wrapping down off, right? No, that's not how that works. So basically what I had to do, put it in the hot water, and I had to twist that part of the leg off. Now, of course, as you would imagine, I had to do a similar thing with the hair from the Super Saiyan, Gold Super Saiyan 5 Goku, and that was a pretty easy process. Now, the next step, it was X-Acto knife time, and so what that means is we're taking the Gold Super Saiyan 5 hair and we're cutting the bangs off as well as those long strands of hair. Now, when I did this, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't put the hair in the hot water. I did that later in the process to take the hair apart, but I just cut the bangs off. So that just goes to show you how sharp the X-Acto knife is. Please be careful if you plan on customizing and using an X-Acto knife. I'm assuming that you're all of age to be using this stuff, but on the off chance that it's like a child or somebody, please use adult supervision when using some of these tools, because there's still one more tool like the Dremel that I'll be mentioning later on in the video, and you definitely, even an adult using that, you need to look up how to use that properly. Don't just use that. Also, just as a point, don't let the figure soak in that hot ass water for too long. I would say 10 seconds max, maybe 15 seconds if you want to push it, but even those time frames I feel like are a bit long. After I got everything dried, it was prime time. Yeah! Or should I say primer time. Okay, it wasn't fun. Now, if you don't already know, the reason why I'm using primer in the first place is because, of course, when you're painting over these figures, you need a way for the paint to adhere. So the primer is a way for the paint to adhere to the figure without it just kind of just peeling off on its own. Now, the only thing that sucks about the primer is, according to the directions on both the white and black primer, which is what I use, it takes over 12 hours for it to set up and completely, you know, work out. Now, as you could imagine, that's a pretty long time to just be waiting for something to completely set up. So in the meantime, you know, try to do something different. This is why I think it would be helpful to just work on different parts of the figure at a time. But I guess in this time, I'll just explain why I use the colors that I use. So the white primer went on the torso and arms of the body to repaint over the fur, simply because when I was going to repaint that fur with a more saturated red instead of that more pinkish color, I wanted it to be easy to paint over. Like, white is an easy color to paint over without the undercolor showing, you know? Now, the pants in the illustration and in the character design is already black, so that wasn't a problem at all. The primer is black, so really I didn't really need black paint. And when I did try to use the black paint, it was a bit more glossy than I wanted it to be. It was a bit more shiny, so I just stuck with the black primer and used that as my colorant. So really I didn't have to worry about using black paint. Now, as for the rest of the figure, of course, everything besides the pants basically got primed in white primer. So in the meantime, while the primer dries, I still got a little bit of work to do, which is sculpting that bang. And honestly, I didn't record that, so I'm just gonna tell you two key principles that I kept in mind when I was sculpting the bang. Keep the hair angular and keep the hair having the definition. And so what I did is I kept it angular and I made the definition. Now, one thing I will say is that I feel like I made it a little bit too thick, that piece of hair too thick. Perhaps if I do a second version of this, I'm gonna make that bang thinner, but I'm still gonna make it just as long. Now, once this piece dried, I started to sand it down because it was still looking super unrefined. But once I started using the sanding sticks, which we mentioned before, it looked So much better. So much better. And of course, the next part after this would be priming all of the hair. Now, repainting the hair was a little bit different, because what I did initially was I got a little bit of yellow and a lot of bit of white, and I made a very pale blonde color to get that, you know, that aesthetic from the Dragon Ball Z days with that pale blonde hair, at least when the aura wasn't up. Now, once the hair was painted, I came behind that once that yellow had dried with a more saturated yellow, and I painted it onto the hair, and then I rubbed it off immediately so I could get the hair in the crevices of the definition of the hair, so we can have a more dynamic, robust coloring to the hair. You may or may not be able to see it on camera, as well as some other flaws, which we'll get to at the end of the video when I actually critique and talk about some of the major flaws I think of this figure. Now, I also did a similar thing with the red on the fur and the hair, where I mixed a darker shade of red and I tried to get that darker, I painted that darker shade of red onto the figure and tried to get it into the crevices of the definition of the hair once again. And of course, in the definition of the muscles, you know, to make the figure pop more. Now, the tail and the belt was very simple, both basically the same color yellow. Mixing some color yellows just so it's not too saturated, because I needed a bright, like lemony yellow. Now the leg wrappings, brother. Oh, brother, man, these leg wrappings, man. So, in order to get the color that I did, I'm just referencing the image once again, I saw that it looked like it was like a saturated, very saturated gold color. And same thing with the wristbands. And what I did is the yellow that came in the packaging was already pretty saturated, so I muted it a little bit with some white, and I mixed some gold in there, and that was going to be the color that I was going to paint the leg wrappings with. But even with that, I wasn't satisfied, so what I did is, after mixing those colors and letting it dry a little bit, what I did is I came behind that with some gold. I painted the gold on, and then I wiped it off. But the thing is, the leg wrappings kept that sort of metallic-y sheen to it, so that was awesome. One thing I want to say about the dremeling process of that lower leg is that after dremeling and I finally getting it right, at a certain point I wasn't willing to dremel any deeper because I was just afraid of messing it up, and I didn't have a bunch of leg wrapping legs to just keep on using or, you know, going through. So I played it safe and I fit what I could of the Gohan, the bottom of the Gohan leg in there, but it wasn't a complete fit. I'll put a picture up on the screen, and as you can see, you know, some of the leg is still showing, and this is going to lead into, of course, my critique of the figure, because I'm still going to critique my own custom. But what I did is I got some epoxy sculpt and I cupped that up with epoxy sculpt, and I bought the leg wrapping up a bit higher. But top coat is going to help to seal the figure, so, you know, the paint isn't really directly exposed to the harsh elements of outside, and it won't, you know, dull and look bad over time. Basically, this is to help give the figure aesthetic longevity, so to speak, which in all it takes the top coat about, it said according to the can, if I'm remembering correctly, I'll put it up on the screen, 30 minutes to a full hour to set up.
You called this art.
Now for my own critique of my own custom, right? Because there's a lot of gripes, and I'm gonna just handle the elephant in the room. I'm sure some customizers, if you came across this video at this point, you're like, you forgot the quintessential thing, which is basically joint prepping. Now, there's a reason why I didn't do it, and that's because I'm lazy. I didn't feel like sanding down the parts. Now, joint prepping is basically sanding down the joints, so when you articulate the figure and you pose your figure, the paint doesn't start to rub off, you know? And so you can see this effect happening on my figure because I didn't joint prep. You can see the paint rubbing off, and you can see the original plastic under. You can see this specifically with, of course, the joints are. So whether that's the back of the knee, the front of the knee, the front of the elbow, the back of the elbow, You know, you can see it now. Of course, with a fur torso and hair, all that stuff is fine and dandy. So one thing I forgot to mention about the custom thing. Another problem that this figure had is that, okay, so when I took the Gohan legs and tried to put them onto the Super Saiyan 4 pelvis piece, right? One leg fits perfectly fine, but the left leg is gonna be loose. And I don't know why Tamashi did that. Your guess is as good as mine. I guess to put a little monkey wrench into customizing. But a way to alleviate this is by using something called Mod Podge. You put that onto the joint and you can coat it with as many layers as you want to make the joint fit on tighter. But yeah, that's the best way I know. Of course, I think you can use the clear nail polish method. Or nail polish, was it nail polish removal? And you can coat that onto your joint, but the Mod Podge I think has a bit more viscosity, so I would go with using that instead. So this is a part I neglected to mention. I can't believe I forgot this part. So a super blunder on my part in making this custom is that I did some super duper dickhead shit. What I did is, once everything was sprayed with top coat and everything's painted, pretty much done. Basically all I had to do was put together the figure. Putting the parts back together to some extent was hard, specifically with the legs. So what I thought was smart to do is I went ahead and put the parts in hot water in order to make them, you know, soften up.
Hey pal, you just blowing from stupid town?
Thinking that the top coat would protect it. Nope, it did not. That shit ruined the paint job. I had to repaint everything. In fact, I kind of rushed it and it left it with a more rough finish towards the end. Like I had a much smoother finish. And then the pants ended up getting really messed up. Yeah, don't do that. Just use a hairdryer, which is your best friend. And I think my last part of the critique is simply, what you call it? Well, two things. One, when I did the extra epoxy on the leg, it made the figure's bottom portion, like from the knee down, it made that part of the leg too long. It doesn't look good proportionally. Also, it gives the figure a long leg look. Now, besides that, there's a little bit of what I would consider shoddy paint job. Now, from a distance, it looks fine. Now, when you get up close, you can start to see some of those flaws. You can see the paint is missing places and everything. Now, of course, I could have covered all of this before putting out this video, but I've delayed this video long enough. And so, I'm just trying not to worry too much about that. But, yeah, I have to keep it 100 with my own figure, you know? I can't just, I can't critique other people's figures and then not keep the same energy with my own stuff, right? But, in all, I would say, decent job for the first ever custom that I've ever done, you know? I think a lot of people will like the aesthetic of the figure, especially when I take it and take pictures of it, because you're not gonna see those flaws, because of course I'm taking pictures of it. Different angles and whatnot, lighting and everything can hide these things. But with that being said, this has been the 3,000 subscriber special, you know? I hope you guys enjoyed it. At this point, I'm looking at my subscriber base, it's like 3,700 or something like that. So depending on how well this video does, I could very well end up like beyond 4,000, you know? But we'll see how the video does. I'm hoping that it does well. I think it will. Actually, I know it will. That's the way that we're supposed to talk. But with that being said, thank you guys as usual for watching. You know, I can't thank you guys enough for supporting me. One thing I always appreciate with the support is that, you know, for as small as my channel is, I think it does pretty well views wise, and I have y'all to thank for that, you know. I know a lot of people want like an action figure collection thing as a special, and that will come eventually. I can't say anytime soon because I just have a whole bunch of stuff to organize before we can even get there, right? So, and then also, I don't know if like I reach 4,000 subscribers fast, and I don't even know what I'm gonna do for a 4,000 subscriber special. I'm not gonna lie, it might just end up being another custom. But depending on how well this video does, I think it'll end up being a regular segment on the channel anyway. But with that being said, there's been Bombastic Plastic. Stay fantastic. Alright people, we're gonna close the video out with this for real this time. But here are the prices of the supplies that I bought for the video. Because some of the stuff I had prior, like sculpting tools, the brushes, the Super Saiyan 4 Goku, the Gold Super Saiyan 5 Goku, aka Super Saiyan 6. That stuff I had beforehand. But the rest of the stuff, oh, and the Dremel I was borrowing. But the rest of the stuff I have the prices for, in case you were curious. And I will put the links in the description to this stuff too. Jolly good show.